Welcome to Pastor Andrew's Inspirations. If you enjoy these videos, please click on the red subscribe button below the video and click the bell for more. Welcome to our online church, a congregation made up of many from around the world. No offering is necessary. Subscribing and watching videos will keep us alive under God's watchful eyes. Today, we will be talking about the biblical region of Corduene. Corduene was an ancient region located south of Lake Van, present-day eastern Turkey. According to the 1911 Encyclopedia Britannica, Corduene is the ancient name of the region of Sirnak province. It is mentioned as Beth Quardu in Syriac sources and is described as a small vassal state between Armenia and Persia in the mountainous area south of Lake Van in modern Turkey. Corduene must also be sought on the left bank of the Tigris. Corduene is documented as a fertile mountainous district, rich in pasturage. Corduene is considered Proto-Kurdish and a precursor to modern Kurdistan. The kingdom of Corduene emerged from the declining Seleucid Empire, and for most of its history, it was a province of the Roman Empire and acknowledged the sovereignty of Rome. From 189 to 90 BC, it enjoyed a period of independence. The people of Corduene were known to have worshipped the Hurrian sky god Tishbe. The Medes and Scythians, mentioned in classical Greek literature, existed only as preconceived notions. The moment the 10,000 began to skirt the lower slopes of the Hamran Mountains, they were in contact with the tribes of Gutium, which are presented here as Medes or Scythians. A direct Gutian connection, however, is unlikely, as the Gutians were not Indo-Iranians and only known to have lived in southern Mesopotamia. A people called the Carduchoi are mentioned in Xenophon's Anabasis. They inhabited the mountains north of the Tigris in 401 BC, living in well-provisioned villages. They were enemies to the king of Persia, as were the Greek mercenaries with Xenophon. But their response to thousands of armed and desperate strangers was hostile. They had no heavy troops who could face the battle-hardened hoplites, but they used longbows and slings effectively. And for the Greeks, the 7 days spent in traversing the country of the Carduchians had been one long continuous battle, which had cost them more suffering than the whole of their troubles at the hands of the king of Persia and Tissaphernes put together. They have been also mentioned as Gordi by Hecatatius of Miletus, 520 BC. The region of Corduene was called Korduk in Armenian sources. In these records, unlike in the Greek ones, the people of Korduk were loyal to Armenian rule, and the rulers of Korduk are presented as members of the Armenian nobility. A prince of Korduk served in the council of the Armenian king Terdat and helped to defend Armenia's southern borders. Additionally, it seems that there was the early presence of the Armenian Apostolic Church in Korduk. This region is traditionally identified with the landing site in Deluge mythology. In the Targumim, Noah's landing, placed after the flood, is given a quadran or quardu. Jacob Neusner identifies the Targumim's locations with Corduene. According to the Agada, Noah landed in Corduene in Armenia. The early 3rd century BCE Babylonian writer Berosus was also of the opinion that Zithros landed with his ship in Corduene. Josephus cited the evidence of Berosus as proof that the flood was not a myth, and also mentioned that the remains of the ark were still visible in the district of Keren, presumably identical with Corduene. In Nashim, the 3rd order of Talmud, Rav Nahum Bar Jacob was allowed proselytization of Kurds from Corduene. Jewish sources trace the origins of the people of Corduene to the marriage of jinns of King Solomon with 500 beautiful Jewish women. According to the Greek historian and geographer Strabo, the region of Corduene referred to the mountains between Diyarbakir and Meuse. He recorded its main cities as Syriza, Satalka, and Panaka, northwest of Bazabda, and considered its inhabitants as descendants of the ancient Carduchians. According to him, the inhabitants had an exceptional repute as master builders and as experts in the construction of siege engines, and for this reason Tigrans used them in such work. He also noticed the country for its naphtha resources. Ammianus Marcellinus visited this region while on a diplomatic visit to the satrap of Corduene. Eritreans who were exiled and deported by the Persians to Mesopotamia were said to have taken up their dwelling in the region of Corduene. According to Strabo, the Gordians received their name from Gordes, son of Triptolemus, who assisted in searching after the loaf, and then settled in the district of Phrygia. Rome was dependent of Corduene as of 31 BC. Both Phraates III and Tigranes the Great laid claim to this province. However, it was conquered by the Roman troops under Pompey. The local population did not defend the Armenian rule, since according to Plutarch, Tigrans had demolished their native cities and had forced them into exile in Tigranocerta. In 69 BC, Arrhenius, the king of Corduene, was secretly planning for a revolt against Tigran. He was negotiating with Appius Claudius for Roman help. However, the plan was revealed and he was killed by Tigranes. Lucullus raised a monument to Arrhenius, and then he took over the region of Corduene. He took part in the funeral of Arrhenius, offered royal robes, gold, and the spoils taken from Tigranes, and called him his companion and confederate of the Romans. After Pompey's success in subjugating Armenia and part of Pontus, and the Roman advance across the Euphrates, Phraates was anxious to have a truce with the Romans. However, Pompey held him in contempt and demanded back the territory of Corduene. He sent envoys, but after receiving no answer, he sent Afranius into the territory and occupied it without a battle. The Parthians who were found in possession were driven beyond the frontier and pursued even as far as Arbela in Adiabene. According to an inscription dedicated to the Temple of Venus, Pompey gave protection to the newly acquired territory of Corduene. Tigranes retained Corduene and Nisibis, which Pompeius withheld from the Parthians. Corduene belonged to Urartu for about 200 years, and to Armenia for about 250 years. While the Parthian dynasty was being weakened by dynastic feuds, Tigranes extended his power by the annexation of Sophene and the submission of Corduene under its prince. Districts of Corduene under Armenian period were Korduk, Kordiknerkin, Kordikverin, Kordikmizhin, Tushak, Eitvank, Orsarank, Agark, Modolank, Kartunik, Albag, Diocletian, and Corduene. Corduene was conquered again by Diocletian in the 3rd century, and the Roman presence in the region was formally recognized in a peace treaty signed between Diocletian and the Persians. Diocletian then raised an army unit from this region under the title Alla Flavia Corduenorum, naming it after his Caesar Flavius Valerius Constantinus. Following the defeat of the Narse, the Sassanid king, at the hands of the Romans in 296, a peace treaty was signed between the two sides, according to which the steppes of northern Mesopotamia with Sangara and the hill country on the left bank of the Tigris as far as Corduene were also ceded to the Romans. The name of the province appears again in the account of the campaign between the Persians, led by Shapur II, and the Romans, led by Julian the Apostate and Jovian his successor. The Romans started to retreat through Corduene after they could not besiege Ctesiphon in the spring of 360. Shapur II staged a campaign to capture the city of Sangara. The town fell after a few days of siege. From Sangara, Shapur directed his march almost due northwards, and leaving Nisibis unassailed upon his left, proceeded to attack the strong fort known indifferently as Panaka. This was a position on the east bank of the Tigris, near the point where that river quits the mountains and debouches upon the plain, though not on the site. It may be considered the representative of modern Cizre in southeastern Turkey, which commands the passes from the low country into the Kurdish mountains. It was much valued by Rome, was fortified in places with a double wall, and was guarded by 3 legions and a large body of Kurdish archers. Shapur sent a flag of truce to demand a surrender, joining with the messengers some prisoners of high rank taken at Sangara, lest the enemy should open fire upon his envoys. The device was successful, but the garrison proved staunch and determined on resisting to the last. After a long siege, the wall was at last breached, the city taken, and its defenders indiscriminately massacred. In 363, a treaty was signed in which Jovian ceded 5 provinces beyond the Euphrates, including Corduene, Armenian, and the towns of Nisibis and Singara, to the Sassanids. Following his treaty, Greeks living in those lands immigrated due to persecution of Christians at the hands of Shapur and the Zoroastrians. In 578, the Byzantine Emperor Flavius Mauritius Tiberius Augustus defeated the Sassanid army led by Khosroes I and conquered Corduene and incorporated it once again in the Roman Empire. The Roman army also liberated 10,000 Christian captives of the Sassanids. According to Khwarizmi, Arabs conquered the area along with Nisibis and Tarabdan in 640. Here's some information on the rulers in those times. Zarbinus, early mid-1st century BC, a king of Corduene, who made overtures to Appius Claudius when the latter was staying at Antioch, wishing to shake off the yoke of Tigranes. He was betrayed and was assassinated with his wife and children before the Romans entered Armenia. When Lucullus arrived, he celebrated his funeral rites with great pomp, setting fire to the funeral pile with his own hand, and had a sumptuous monument erected to him. Manisaurus, 115 AD. He took control over parts of Armenia and Mesopotamia in the time of Trajan. The Parthian king Osroes declared war against him, which led to Manisaurus siding with the Romans. Ardashir, 340 AD. He was against the Christianization of Corduene. Jovinian, satrap, 359 AD. Corduene, Carducci, and the Kurds. 19th century scholars such as George Rawlinson identified Corduene and Carducci with the modern Kurds, considering that Carducci was the ancient lexical equivalent of Kurdistan. This view is supported by some recent academic sources, which have considered Corduene as equivalent in modern-day Kurdistan. Other modern scholars reject a Kurdish connection. There were numerous forms of this name, partly due to the difficulty of representing KH in Latin. The spelling Carduccio is itself probably borrowed from Armenian, since the termination CHOI represents the Armenian language plural suffix K. It is speculated that Carducci spoke in an old Iranian language. Don't forget, if you enjoy these videos, please click on the red subscription button below the video and click on the bell for more. This is the biblical region of Corduene. Adonai Nisi, the Lord is our banner. God's blessings be upon us all.